Good evening. Welcome to Dallas and the second annual To Be Empowered Conference. My name is Yumi and I'm here with my husband Simon, and we have been waiting all year to be here. This year's conference theme is ownership. Ownership for me is embracing how To Be informs more and more of the decisions that I make, but it does not define me. It's the opposite of denial, and is what comes after acceptance. It's about suiting up and facing the tedious battle of getting out of bed or walking to your car when you're not 100% sure if you're going to have a kiss the pavement moment. It's also about knowing when it's time to welcome change. I was 20 years old when I was diagnosed with Miyoshin myopathy, and shortly after, my younger brother Andy was diagnosed with 2B at age 15. I was a sophomore in college. I was young, I had plans. I wasn't sure what I wanted from life, but it certainly was not one with a neuromuscular disorder. It was an incredibly confusing time when all I could see was uncertainty. But as many of you know, sometimes there's nothing to be done but move forward. I moved to New York City after college with an it's now or never attitude. Living in New York was a chance to prove myself, that I was independent and capable and could figure out life with muscular dystrophy with no boundaries. It was equal parts wonderful and terrifying. My best friends were my roommates, and I had a coworker who once pushed me home in an office chair because I was having an unusually tired day. But at other times, it was defeating. There was once a major power outage that took out the whole Northeast for a couple of days. It was in the middle of a workday, and the city went dark. And by the grace of God and a ride from my boss halfway across town, I managed to walk the rest of the way home, only to have to walk 11 stories up to my unit. I will never forget the experience of living in such an amazing and challenging city, but I was admittedly relieved when I found a reason to move back to Ohio. Around this time, I met my husband and eventually became a mother. The early years of parenthood pushed the limits of my body, my confidence, and creativity. Some of it felt near impossible and borderline reckless, and other parts were hilariously effective and downright weird. Like, what are you supposed to do when your adorable infant has a blowout poop and you need your hands to push yourself up off the ground? So those of you that haven't spent a lot of time with babies, it's completely true. They can poop a bomb out of their diaper and shoot it up their ass. Like, that was not a part of the script, but you know. Anyway, it's crazy. We've had a lot of different kinds of help. We modified a crib, we used a stroller in the house, but mostly my son followed me around like a chubby, hairless puppy. My default was to power through and deal with the consequences later. And there were painful consequences to not respecting my body's limits. But I just kept pretending nothing was wrong. I just wanted to live my life, keeping 2B as far away as I could possibly control. But as my body inevitably weakened, it started to take my spirit down with it, and that was not okay. I would fall with increasing frequency, and sitting there crumpled on the floor, I grew thorns. It was not easy to comfort or even help me, because I would be radiating anger. My heart felt more brittle than my body after those falls. Lying there, embarrassed by my own deficiencies, I was furious at the betrayal of my body and at the cruelty of the slow theft of my strength. The cycle of grief and sorrow that came with every loss of ability felt like a brutal attack to my identity. I was just so depleted, trying not to get trampled in my body's unwinnable race against genetics. So what changed? Last year, right here in this room, a group of complete strangers changed my life. I didn't know it at the time, but I really needed to meet all of you. The first 2B conference came at a time when I wasn't particularly plugged into the patient community at all and very used to figuring everything out myself. But over the course of a weekend, I was riveted by the familiar stories shared. You see, I had kept myself safe by not sharing, by putting up a wall that kept judgment and vulnerability out. This armor of denial kept me from having to accept that progression was happening and the 2B was here to stay. From afar, it looked like I had owned it, but really it was a facade. The risk simply wasn't worth it to me until last year. In letting go of isolation, I was letting people see who I really was, 2B and all. You as a group not only gave me permission to ask for help, but also offered a hand. One of the scariest decisions that I had to make last year was transitioning to a power chair. I can assure you, when I came to the conference, I had no intention of getting a chair. Not for years. I was going to continue riding my Segway, convinced that balancing on it was preferable to the dreaded chair. It also became very clear to me that I didn't really understand my own condition. I began a project to relearn more about 2B and me. I had gathered 15 years of medical records from all the various hospitals we had visited across the country and made a binder all about me. I have had too many conversations with doctors and specialists who clearly were not familiar with LGMD, and admittedly, it upset me at first. But as satisfying as it might have been to get upset in the moment, it usually doesn't get results. I even read a book on how to advocate for yourself as a patient, which might feel obvious to some, but it pointed out good habits and the importance of keeping your own documents organized, hence the binder. As odd as it might sound, sometimes the patient needs to be the teacher. Generous members of this community shared with me their experience of the process of acquiring a DME. And armed with all this collected information, I shared copies of this binder with my doctors and the physical therapist who eventually wrote my letter of necessity. It's been about 7 months in the chair, and the bottom line is no regrets. Don't get me wrong, I'd prefer to walk. But now I have peace of mind that I won't be a fall risk when I engage with the outside world, my office, my children's school, or restaurant. It has made me more accountable not only for myself, but other chair users. I've had to stand up for myself when there are glaring accessibility issues, things I would have never felt comfortable doing before. So I leave you with this. There's a hugely popular blog called Humans of New York. The photographer, Brandon Stanton, features a portrait and a street interview to share stories of everyday life. There's a post from 2013 of a woman casually standing against a wall in Grand Central Station, sharing a bit of advice. When a wave comes, go deep. There are 3 things you can do when life sends a wave at you. You can run from it, but then it's going to catch up and knock you down. You can also fall back on your ego and try to stand your ground, but then it's still going to clobber you. Or you can use it as an opportunity to go deep and transform yourself to match the circumstances. And that is how you get through the wave. My goal is to go deep. Most days I don't do it perfectly, but this journey is not once and done. The wave still catches and clobbers me. But there is good with the bad. Having 2B has added so much unexpected color to my life. It has taught me compassion and perseverance and perspective. It's a hard lesson for anyone to learn that you don't always get what you want. Contrary to the overwhelming fear that I had at diagnosis, I have realized that the things in my life of true value have not been diminished by 2B. Ownership looks different for every person. Some of us gain an impressive understanding of the biology behind our unique DNA. Others advocate. Some of us prefer to be left alone, and that's okay. But this tribe here, all of us who showed up, we will still be here, sharing, learning, and surfing this particular wave by owning and ultimately destroying 2B. I have been made stronger by knowing all of you, and I look forward to spending this weekend with you. Thank you.